What's going on, guys? Galaxy Gaming here, and I'm going to show you a submission that I'm going to be sending out here in the next week. I know I talk about it a lot during grade review, and I think this is the first time, from the actual start to finish, you guys are going to be seeing the process. So we're just going to get right into it. So this is 3 submissions basically in one, and I'll go through why that is. So the other thing you'll see is these little sticky notes. So I talk about it all the time during my streams. I always like to keep track of what I think these will get. Now, these sticky notes, you'll see a clip of it right now, but basically what these are for is when I go through, I have an Epson, Epson V600 photo scanner. I scan all of the cards with their associated grade of what I think they are gonna get. And then once they come back, if they get the grade, cool. If not, then I learn from my mistakes. So all of that is where that knowledge comes from, the grade reviews. So that's where that comes from. So we're just going to kind of show off. So the first one is the band Moo Moo Milk, probably one of my favorite kind of side weird collections to start collecting. I have a good chunk so far, but I was definitely missing that one. And honestly, I don't really care what this one will get. It's more, I just want to grade the ones that I personally come across during my shows and stuff like that. So I think this was probably like an 8 or a 9, but honestly, I don't really care. The next one, which was pretty cool, was this Breloom from Deoxys. This one has a pretty good shot at a 10, so that's why you don't see a sticky note on that one, so that was super cool. The same with the Carmine. Any of the stuff that you don't see with a label, either I already took it off to do something else with it, or it's going to get a 10. And apologize for these. My cat got a little bit too crazy and attacked me the other day. So here we go. So first, right off the bat, First Ed Shadowless Zapdos coming in at a hot PSA 3 is what I'm going to assume. And there's some stuff stuck on the top loader there. But that was really big. Super excited to pick that up from a collection. Next, we got the Sabrina's Alakazam first edition from Gym Challenge. Super nice. Probably one of my favorite arts from the Gym Challenge set, not being Zard. So that I'm thinking is going to get a PSA 9. Next is the Ghastly from Modern, thinking that's going to get a 10. And then another First Ed Shadowless, Chansey, thinking that's probably going to come back as a PSA 3. Obviously, the First Ed stuff's a little bit loved, but it's honestly assumed at this point. So this one was actually pretty interesting. So I didn't know for the Japanese Birthday Pikachu that there were some different printings of this one. So this one in particular, and hopefully you guys can see it, there's a white star. So technically this one is considered, I think, the second print or the White Star print. So it's not like anything crazy, but it was in really good shape. Thinking that's going to come as a 9. Next, another band. So we got the Sabrina's Gengar. I talk about this on stream often, but this is probably one of my personal favorites and one of the big chases for anyone trying to collect band artwork with it's kind of hard to catch it on camera, but the tombstones in the background. Apparently us US kids couldn't tolerate tombstones, so they had to edit. So I think that's probably going to get an 8. Next, the First Ed Rocket Scyther from Gym Heroes. I really love this one. The background is super nice. The contrast is super cool. Next is a Mewtwo. This one's kind of on the edge of not really needing to be graded, just because a PSA 8 probably isn't that far off. But for Mewtwo specifically, when I was looking up my prices and what I would sell it for if it comes back as an 8, was a little bit more than the near mint price because this was in a lot of structure decks. So that's why Mewtwo, Poliwrath, and the like are a little bit cheaper, but that one seems to be worth trying to grade. Next was the Blaine's Arcanine. Always nice with the Blaine's from Gym Challenge. Next was a really nice Misty's Gyarados on Limb as well. PSA 8, thinking that one. Vintage. Anytime I think that's probably going to get a PSA 8 or above is normally when I will attempt to submit for grading. Oftentimes it's worth the price, but there's also some areas where 8s are around the same as near mint. So always check that, and that's why, again, I like to assess my cards ahead of time. So if this card does come back as an 8, how much would I expect to get out of it versus selling it raw at near mint? So that's why I always make sure to pre-grade my stuff. And then I talk about this on stream a lot, kind of the buzzword here, but the Sabrina's Gengar, this one's going to be very difficult to grade. A, because it's a Gengar, and B, because of all that holo there. And there's one print line towards the bottom, but this one was in pretty good shape. So I think a PSA 8 for this one was around 300 to 400 when I looked at it before. Next, the big boy himself, the Blaine's Charizard. This is still the error, so the error is actually the most common of the Blaine's Charizard. The corrected is the one that costs more. But still, Blaine's Charizard, it's a Charizard. It's just kind of like an auto submission. Now you're kind of seeing some of the crazier ones. So the two others behind this Venusaur specifically are going to be in its own submission. So this one needs to be in its own submission at a declared value of $500 or lower. So that's going to be, I think, the value plus tier. I might be wrong on that, but that's the value plus tier. I think it's either $29.99 or $39.99 per card. But these ones are above that threshold. So as we kind of go up higher, I have to submit these in different submission tiers. So that's why we're kind of seeing this as the second batch. So the first edition Shadowless Venusaur, I believe I assessed this. I took the sticker off because I was doing some photos and stuff and scans. This one was assessed as a PSA 5, so that's still pretty good. Next, the first ed Blastoise Shadowless. This one was assessed a little bit worse condition than the Venusaur. There are definitely some issues, and you'll see a scan of some of these in a little bit higher detail so you can kind of really see. And again, I really advocate for scanners if you do grade a lot, especially if you're worried about PSA damaging your cards. You can have a scan prior to them even scanning your cards. So it's a nice little trust but verify, so that's really nice. And then the big boy lizard himself, the Shadowless Unlimited Charizard. This one was also assessed as a PSA 5. So super cool. And now we get to go to the last two, which is the biggest, probably the biggest dollar value submission that I've done. One of them is for my buddy, so it's not technically mine. I'm kind of assessing it or sending it in on his behalf. But we have the first edition Shadowless Charizard, the biggest chase in all of Pokemon from a kind of large population perspective. That's not counting, you know, all the bigger ones like the Illustrators or the Kangaskong or anything like that. But this, when people think of a high dollar value card, it always comes back to the first edition Shadowless Charizard. And this is probably a big childhood dream of mine to even be in possession of this card, let alone be privileged to help it go along its grading journey and being involved in this card. It's really, really important to me to handle this with care and being privileged enough to handle it. So super excited for that. And then my friend's card is the Gold Star Charizard. This card is insane. This card keeps, you know, all Gold Stars really just keep rising in popularity, but this one is always probably the biggest top 3 fan favorite. My personal favorite is the Rayquaza, but I probably won't see that in my lifetime. We'll see, but a really big assortment, a really big range of stuff that, yeah, I'm super excited to go through the grading process. Everything is kind of set, and honestly, this video is also a nice kind of confirmation of what I'm grading, show you guys how I process cards and how I process cards for grading at a certain dollar amount. So you don't have to be afraid of the Zards, even though Ash was awful at training his Zard. You don't have to be afraid of them. So super excited. I'll probably do a part 2. Well, not probably, I will do a part 2 when I get these submissions back. So hopefully they'll come back before my next show in August. And that's the plan. So yeah, super stoked. And fingers crossed that I'm right, because if I'm not, then you guys are going to think that I'm not good at this. So we'll see. Appreciate you guys.